Hello, my name is Karthik and I am a doctor based in the UK. I wanted to make this series of videos, perhaps more to document my journey as I move from the UK to the US to train further as a physician. This journey of mine started in 2018 and it it's 5 years down the line. I've done a few exams. I've gone to the US for clinical experiences. I have worked in the UK as a junior doctor in the last 2 or 3 years. So I just thought, all of this I would document it, and because I've done this whole journey solo, like without any other people doing it with me, and I didn't have any sort of like mentors or support. I just sort of figured things out on my own, sort of trial and error. And it's a challenging journey. It's a multi-step process. It's very expensive, and it would have been nice to have had someone who has gone through this process, from my medical school, for example, who I could have asked for support, or I could have, checked in with, where I'm at in the journey. Is there anything I can do to change? Is there anything I can do to improve, rather, or do the right thing as I go along? So I thought, this might be helpful to someone who's in a similar position as me, coming from the UK to the US, in moving to do residency in the States. So, and for anyone else, for some general guidance, I'm happy to offer that as well. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's try this out. I do apologize for the video quality. I'm recording this using Zoom, so that I'm in my room and blur the background and etc. So it's not the best quality, shall we say. All right, so I've got this little script here, so don't mind me as I flick to the left and have a look. So a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Karthik. That's it, Karthik. And I was born in Singapore. I was born and raised in Singapore. Ethnically Indian. My grandparents moved to Singapore, and then parents were born there. They met each other there, and then they had me there. Grew up, as I said, in Singapore until the age of 21, where then I moved to London to study medicine at Barts and the London School of Medicine and Dentistry, which is part of Queen Mary University of London, which was a 5-year course. So I started studying in 2015 in September, and I graduated in March 2020, right when COVID was heating up and first came on the scene. My US journey started in 2018, where a senior of mine gave a talk to the school. He was pursuing a surgical residency and was outlining the pros and cons of going to the US, which broadly are shorter clinical training compared to the UK. The UK, after you graduate, it might take around 10 years from when you graduate to when you fully qualify as a specialist. And this time may increase depending on where you want to be a consultant, because some places are more competitive than others, and it may take more time to get a spot as a consultant in the NHS. And so in the US, it's you can be a consultant equivalent, which is known as an attending, in 3 years after medical school. So you could, for example, be a hospitalist who is a specialist in internal medicine in the hospital setting. And you need to just, well, not just, but you need to have a board certification in internal medicine, which is what internal medicine residents sit at the end of 3 years after medical school, should they choose that path. And if they decide to stop there, they can, and it's a great career. It's well paying as well, and they can do that as their specialization. For others, they may decide to go further and do a fellowship and subspecialize, or rather specialize in a specialty related to internal medicine, like cardiology, which I'm interested in, pulmonology or respiratory medicine, gastroenterology, nephrology, and so on and so forth. I'm mainly talking about medical specialties because I'm interested in medicine and cardiology, which is a medical specialty. So I'm not going to talk about surgical specialties as such. So that was one thing he raised. And another thing was the quality of training as well, where the US has cutting edge health resources, technologies, cutting edge research, really brilliant minds from all over the world. Not saying the UK doesn't have that, but pardon me, but the US just draws all these people from all over the world. And by quality of training, I also mean the amount of investment they have in my development as a clinician. They take time to check in on my progress, the attendings, I mean, or my senior clinicians who I'll be training under in residency. They dedicate time and resources for my education in the week, protected time. So there's lectures, there's tutorials, there's now what's really popular is ultrasound, bedside ultrasound teaching for residents, so that they can make quick decisions at the bedside, aiding in procedures like central lines, arterial lines, cannulation as well. So there's dedicated time, protected time each week, multiple times a week for my development, alongside my clinical duties. This is very different from the NHS, from my experience, because primarily I felt like just another doctor on the rota to staff the ward mostly, and my development is secondary to that. It feels deprioritized, and the NHS is under a lot of stress, as you may be aware. So priority is patient turnaround, and your development it plays second fiddle, it feels like now, and it doesn't have nearly as good a quality of resources and as a US healthcare setting does. So it's just very different, and I need this to become the clinician that I want to be. This investment in my development. So that's another thing in the US that's drawn me to it. The last thing is, with there's no beating around the bush here, but the US pays well. It pays clinicians well, and I think that's important. because it's a very, difficult career. There are long years in training, there are debts you incur. This whole journey has been very expensive for me, and the work you do comes with lots of risks, lots of frustrations. It's continued, education. It doesn't stop here. Learning, you keep up with the latest developments, latest trials, and practice evidence-based medicine. You're by the patient's bedside, long hours in the week, long hours overnight, for example. So I think as a result of that, you should be fairly rewarded. It does not feel that way at all in the NHS. And you may be aware of the strike after strike that junior doctors have had to undergo in this past year. So fair compensation, good compensation is another appeal of the US. So those are the three main things that he was touching on that really got my ears perking up. That was in 2018. And since then, I've prepared for and set step 1 in 2019 in August. That was step 1, and that was when it was still scored before it's now pass fail, before it has become pass fail now. And I did well. I did really well, and that gave me another boost to pursue this journey to the US. So coming then to working in the NHS, I started working in August 2020, and at that time I was still committed to pursuing residency in the States. So then I began studying for step 2 CK, and that happened alongside my work in the NHS through my working hours in the day or night, on call, etc. So I had to really plan, and I used a really good scheduling tool to help plan my study time in my free time outside of my work, and giving some rest days and time off and things like that. This tool was quite good at doing that for me. Eventually, after studying for step 2, I took that in April 2022, which was last year, and I did again really well. So then that gave me another boost to get my application sorted for match in the US. I didn't elect to apply to the match last year because I didn't think I was ready, and so then I aimed for this year's instead. So in between last year's step 2, which I took in April last year, I finished foundation program, which is like a transitional 2-year program in the UK after you graduate, before you declare a specialty, where you're rotating around the hospitals. Rotating around different specialties in the hospital or in the community as well. I finished that in August, and then I wanted to boost my portfolio, so I then arranged 4 different clinical experiences in the US, starting in November last year, where I spent a month in an outpatient cardiology setting in New York. That was great. I got some hands-on experience. I managed to examine patients, perform EKGs, assess them, derive my differentials or my assessment plans, discuss that with the preceptor, the cardiologist supervising me, and I also documented for each patient as well in the format that would be expected of an intern coming in to the US. we're doing residency. So that was good. I enjoyed how thorough, doctors are in the US, working each patient up in a methodical fashion, presenting in a very logical fashion, things like that. It was nice to see that. That was my first experience. Then the next one was an inpatient observer rotation in Philadelphia. That was in internal medicine, so I got to round with the residents, discuss patients, follow them through their journey, suggest maybe certain ideas, and discussed medications or management plans. And I got accustomed to Epic, which is the most popular electronic medical record system in the US. And boy, that's like, compared to the systems I've used in the UK that I've personally used, like, that's Epic is just, it blew my mind. Though I know now some hospitals in the UK are using Epic as well in a different form. So that's great. Epic is amazing. My third rotation was in critical care in a hospital in Florida, and that was amazing as well. I saw how Palm Crit Care attendings run the unit. I got embedded in the team. I followed patients. I would present patients, present their chest X-ray, present their EKGs, present their lab finding, give my impression, and suggest changes to their management plans. So I really felt part of the team, and I felt I contributed to the patient journey as well, and that was really good for me to experience, that I could adapt to the American healthcare system. And my fourth and last US clinical experience was in an outpatient cardiology setting in Denver. And like my first rotation in New York with the cardiology clinic, it was a similar sort of thing. You assess patients in the outpatient setting, you take a history, you do an examination, you also then discuss each patient with the preceptor, and you get a chance to show what you're made of. So all these experiences are important because it forms part of your application in the form of, firstly, showing to residency programs that you've gained exposure to the American healthcare system. That's one. Number two is hopefully you get some letters of recommendation, which are an important part of the overall application to residency programs in the match. So I got 4 letters, so one for each rotation, where essentially US clinicians vouch for you as an applicant, as an international graduate, which is very important because it shows that you have, tried to minimize your risk to residency programs in terms of taking you on from outside the US. So their big question is, what's the risk of me interviewing Karthik and then offering him a position in the program? And I have then shown I've gotten exposure to US system. There are clinicians who can vouch for me. So then hopefully then that can show my risk is mitigated or minimized into coming to the US. So that's like the idea behind those letters and the US clinical experiences. Around that time, I also set the occupational English test, which I thought was redundant because my first language is English, and I trained I studied medicine in English, and I worked in the NHS in English-speaking settings, but that was the replacement for the Step 2 CS, which is now long gone. So that the OET is a required part of that, along with one of the ECFMG pathways, for which I use pathway 1, which is my registration as a junior doctor, as a fully independent clinician in the UK. So GMC, which is General Medical Council, which licenses doctors in the UK. They verified that I was fully qualified, and that automatically made me suitable to use pathway 1. So I became ECFMG certified in January of this year. Subsequently, I sat, and so from January this year to April, I studied for Step 3. Step 3 is the final step in the USMLE exams to allow for fully independent practice of medicine in the US, essentially. It's something that is not required to apply to residency programs, but because of my unique situation, I am not eligible for the J1 visa because I'm not able to get the statement of need, which is a statement from your country of resident, country of which you're a resident. So that country's Ministry of Health needs to issue this statement of need, which is to endorse your return to the country after training in the US, which is the J1 visa. It's an exchange visa situation. I'm from Singapore, so I'm a Singaporean citizen, but I do not hold an offer of employment from a Singapore hospital, which is one of the prerequisites for Singapore's Ministry of Health issuing that statement. So that's gone. So Singapore wouldn't sponsor me on that statement of need or allow me to get that J1. Then coming to the UK, I'm not a permanent resident here. I don't have a residency status in the UK. So then UK would not offer me the statement of need as well. So the only visa I can apply for is the H1B visa, which is my preferred visa anyway. And a requirement to obtain that visa is that you would need to pass Step 3, which is why I did Step 3. And I did that in April this year, and I did very well again in the step. So that was great to see. And then the last few months, I've been working in the NHS as well, in locum shifts capacity as a locum doctor. So I pick up shifts according to my preference. Whatever days I wish to work in the week, I would work. Whatever days that I want off, I would take off. This was because my ultimate plan is to go to the US, and the last few months, including these next few months, I'll be busy with the application process and interviews as well. So all of that is just to sort of catch you up on my journey since 2018, where I started thinking about the US. Right now, where it stands is I have submitted my application to the match for next year via the online portal, ERAS portal. And that is a big online application CV thing where you write about yourself, your most meaningful experiences in your training and outside of work that's shaped you as a unique applicant to the US. It's got your personal statement, it's got your letters of recommendation, it's got your step scores, and then you sort of send that to programs that you're interested in. You have to pay for each program. And so after sending it across, programs, they were able to start viewing the applications last Wednesday, and now it's for them to sort out applicants they wish to interview. And in the next few weeks, fingers crossed, I will get interview invites, which over the subsequent few months, I'll be interviewing at my preferred programs until about January. And that's when the interview season sort of winds down from, it's like hottest between November and December, but it goes from October to January. Then, taking the programs that I interviewed with, I would be ranking them in order of preference. I would submit that rank order list by the end of February. And then the third week of March, that's match week, where, fingers and toes crossed, I will find out if I have matched to a residency program. And then on the third Friday, on the Friday of the third week, I will find out which program I have been matched to. And then begins, then formalizes my move to the US, because that's my job offer. And then over the next few months, it's like sorting out admin issues, the visa, settling a flat near the hospital, other, sort of admin issues, moving my whole life to the US. And July 1st, that'll be my first day of work as a first-year resident in the US. And that's, essentially the whole journey. So I appreciate, I've just basically rambled on for however long I have. I'm not even sure how long I've been speaking for. But yeah, I just wanted to share a bit about myself, and I'm interested to find out what people want to know more about of what I've spoken about, my journey as a UK medical graduate, then the NHS, as a junior doctor, as a foundation program doctor, and then along this whole thing, taking step 1, step 2, step 3, taking the OET, the occupational English test, my US clinical experiences, getting ECFMG certified, the residency application process, the ERAS application process, interviewing and ranking and so on. So if you wanted more information about that, or you wanted me to answer some questions, this is the chance to ask them, and I'm here to give my advice where I feel I can in subsequent videos. So fire away and let me know. And yeah, like, I'm excited for this whole process, and I think I will be making more videos about the interviews and so on as I go through them. But based on any interest in this video, or any interest in any specific parts of my application or what I've spoken about, I will make subsequent videos based on that as well. So yeah, that's me signing off for now. Cheers.